Okay. First of all, hello, everyone. Thank you, Gnat and Sheldon, so much for doing this. It's thrilling to reconnect with you and renew our friendship. So, hello to everybody. Today's subject is something very near and dear to me. In fact, it's bone deep, literally. It's a subject that I personally have had to deal with and I have healed. I'm going to tell you today how your diet, particularly your beverages, how your lifestyle can affect your bones and joints, your cartilage, all the bones and joints in your body. And hopefully you'll leave today with some information you may not have realized or may be surprising to you. So it was 40 years ago. I went to Stanchich, who's now my husband. I always like to say I'm trying to get my money's worth out of that consultation. And I visited him in Boulder, Colorado. I had pain in my feet, my hips, my hands. I had pain all over, and it had run in my family, but I was not going to have it. I was determined to figure out why I had it, and I was going to get over it. So I found Lino, who had a clinic with 2 physicians and an acupuncturist in Boulder. I went in, I had my macrobiotic consultation. I thought, I'm not going to do this macrobiotics. It's too far out, but I'll hear what he has to say. He was very highly recommended. And for 40 years now, I have been eating a plant-based diet with special foods I'm going to tell you about that have supplemented my bones and joints. I'm convinced, and I'm actually sure I would have had a hip replacement by now or 2, possibly a knee replacement, and heaven forbid, other illnesses had I not changed my diet. It's very simple. What we eat makes our blood. Our blood makes our cells, our bones, our organs. So therefore, food is crucial. Now in this culture, food is entertainment, it's fun, it's a social enjoyment, and it's all of that. Healthy food is also fabulously fun and enjoyable. Food creates your mental health and your physical health. Today we're focusing on bone health. So let's get going. Arthritis is a hugely important and prevalent disease in America and in the Western world. Less so in third world countries. They have other conditions. We in the West eat more meat, we eat more dairy, we eat more sugar, we eat more. Obesity is rampant and other diseases are rampant. The US is not first, second, third, or fifth, or 10th in world health. We're about 40, but we spend probably 4,000 times more than other countries on health, but not on prevention. Today, we're going to talk about prevention. So share this with the young people who are coming up, share this with your friends, and let's prevent bone illness. It affects over 54 million Americans. Quite a few are under the age of 65. It's not a totally elder condition. 300,000 are children. And it's the leading cause of disability. Now that makes it extremely costly, not only in the pain that it's causing, but in the national debt. So ill health is extremely draining on our financial reserves that we could be putting towards other wonderful programs to boost our society. We'll focus on osteoarthritis, which is the one I had, which is a deterioration of the cartilage between the bones. And we'll also talk about rheumatoid and other types of arthritis. Osteoarthritis is where the cartilage, that white padding between the bones, dissolves. It dissolves by acidic foods. Acidic foods mainly are meat, any kind of animal protein, very acidic to the body. It doesn't mean we don't ever have to have those foods again. However, in America, we've just overdone it. We have eaten too much meat. When I grew up, we had meat almost every meal. We don't need it for protein, but in our culture, in my parents' culture, meat was considered very strengthening food. However, my mother had serious arthritis. It ran in my family. And I broke the cycle, thank goodness. So osteoarthritis is where the cartilage dissolves because of acidic foods. And therefore, you get bone on bone. The nerves get pinched. This is what happens in the back, in the hips, and in the knees, particularly, where there's weight bearing, and it's very painful. I've had that pain. That's why they call it bone deep. And possibly some of you have experienced that. 31 million people just in America have osteoarthritis. Now, I studied a little bit last night and this week, actually, on Israel and some of the health concerns of Israel. Israel has better bone health than America. And one of the reasons is it's a sunny, warm climate. The bones detest being cold, and therefore you have more arthritis and osteoporosis in people who live in the northern climates where it's cold. The sun helps you absorb the calcium, so it's a wonderful benefit you have of living there in the sun. Rheumatoid is quite different. It's an autoimmune disease, and the joints become red and swollen, and actually the hands get misshapen. The joints swell, and then it's very difficult that people become crippled in the hands because of the rheumatoid arthritis. But many of the things I'll tell you about today will help both types of arthritis. So here we are. Osteoporosis is very common in the Western world, not so common in the poorer countries where they eat less animal food. And in osteoporosis, you've probably seen pictures. The bones actually become like Swiss cheese. They get holes in them. They're porous. A person with osteoporosis can break their hip by stepping off a curb or by just moving around because the bones are weak. This also affects degenerative disc. Disc are bones. Our spine is made of disc and bones. And when the discs degenerate, they collapse on each other. So you may have heard from even top scientists that once you get osteoporosis or arthritis, it's a lifetime illness. And I totally disagree, simply because bones are alive. When you break a bone, it knits back. We worked with Robert Lang of Yale University, who says you can rebuild bones and reverse osteoporosis with the right diet, which I will go into. Okay. 10 million Americans have osteoporosis. It's huge, mainly Northern European heritage and Asian. Women have it more than men, and small-boned women. Obviously, women with larger bone mass, thick constitutions, strong, hefty, they have thicker bones. But it also is related to a sedentary lifestyle, because you probably know that exercise builds bones. They've measured the bones of tennis players, and the one in which they held the tennis racket was much stronger and more firm than the bones in the one where they didn't hold the weight. So actually, we'll talk about doing lightweight exercises, perhaps carrying weights, or you can buy vests you wear when you walk. I'm not talking about 50 pounds, but just a few extra pounds that will help build your bones. Low estrogen levels can affect the bones. We'll talk about foods that are healthy and healthy estrogen. Cigarettes and alcohol definitely affect osteoporosis. There are many types: osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, which I had, bone-on-bone pain, rheumatoid arthritis, the autoimmune disease, arthritis that's also connected with psoriasis. The appendages actually become very swollen. They call the fingers like sausage fingers. It's very painful. The skin also is hard and crusty, which is also diet related. Degenerative disc, I've spoken of. Knee degeneration. I've noticed even in myself, after 40 years of eating plant-based diet and very high mineral foods, if I have certain beverages, for me, it's like cold apple juice. I avoid cold water very much, but every so often it's hot, I'll have some cold beverages, and sure enough, my knee will become sensitive. I hold back so it really doesn't become painful, but it can be sensitive if I have certain beverages. Again, the bones do not like cold, and we'll talk about how to have healthy, refreshing beverages without chilling your bones. And then hip deterioration. There are over 300,000 hip replacements in the U.S. each year. It's huge. It's very, very prevalent. The National Institutes of Health have given these statistics, and you can see this woman, looks like, has two hip replacements. I have a friend who has two also. And they're using new techniques now. I'm reading about where rather than to replace the hip joint, they are injecting a cement-like substance in there. Again, let's try to prevent this and reverse it naturally, if possible. However, you probably know that hip replacements, knee replacements are miraculous. I'm not discounting the incredible minds of the scientists and physicians. They're really miraculous operations, but let's see if we can prevent them. All right. Here's a knee and joint deterioration and a reconstruction. 500,000 of these were performed each year. There are more knee replacements than hip replacements. Okay. I recommend, if you haven't, to have a bone density scan. It measures your bone mineral density. They call it BMD. And you can find out if you have pre-osteoporosis, if you have osteoporosis, or if you're leaning towards that. And then you can have more statistics. I really believe in getting diagnosis. Then you know what you're dealing with. I don't believe in living in la-la land, wondering. Find out, get a blood test, get a bone density test, get a thyroid test, know what you're dealing with. And at the bottom here, which I believe Gennat was set up in a recorded format, there's a wonderful website, the NIH government website, which tells you how to determine your bone mass from the test. I do want to say, and they say also, not all these tests are totally accurate. Sometimes people have osteoporosis and they feel no pain at all. So I think it's important to get a test, know where you stand, literally where you stand, and find out, oh, I think I do need to eat more of these high mineral foods. You know, I think I won't eat this certain food that can demineralize my body. Bone density medications have been at best very risky. Many women were taking medications for their estrogen, Premarin and mare's urine, pregnant mare's urine. That's what Premarin stands for. And it has severe side effects. There's a website called drugs.com, and I'm sure there are others. Drugs.com will tell you the side effects of any prescription medicine. Fosamax has been shown to cause jaw deterioration. So again, let's prevent it through diet. Let's get very smart and eat better. But seriously, it makes all the difference. Lifestyle. We recommend a plant-based diet, very high in dark leafy greens. Ganat knows this, Sheldon knows this. We eat the dark leafy greens every lunch and dinner and sometimes for breakfast. This morning, my husband and I made miso soup, very strengthening for the intestines, for the blood, and I put a large tablespoon of chopped parsley on top. Parsley is tremendously high in calcium and iron as well, and vitamin C, actually, more vitamin C in parsley than oranges. And we always have it in our kitchen. That's a food tip I'm throwing out there early on. The dark leafy greens would be kale, collards, mustard greens, bok choy, broccoli. I just recommend you just cook a nice bunch every day. We cook a bunch and then we have it right there to take from, mix them up, add some nice tahini lemon dressing or some olive oil lemon dressing to it if you like a little extra flavor, and learn to like them. We'll talk about dark leafy greens later. The third food group is one that you may or may not have tried, sea vegetables. I had not eaten sea vegetables knowingly when I saw my husband 40 years ago. However, I found out later that we've all eaten sea vegetables throughout our life. They use it in ice cream to thicken it. But those of us who love Japanese foods, Japan has the greatest longevity of any country, by the way. The Japanese restaurants, of course, have sushi. They have seaweed salad. I'm sure Ganat and others, you'll have different cooking teachers in the forum teaching about using sea vegetables. We'll talk about those and show some later in mine. Outdoor exercises and fresh air is essential. Again, I think you have the benefit of all the sunshine, and it's wonderful. You don't want too much, but good amount of sunshine, particularly early in the morning, later in the afternoon, avoiding the noon sun, getting fresh air, because the number one element for life is oxygen. We can live very long without oxygen, just a few minutes. Cells with oxygen have no cancer. Cancer occurs in an anaerobic environment where the oxygen is blocked with fats and the oxygen can't get in. And then the cells putrefy, they multiply, and tumors can grow. Oxygen is key. Deep breathing is key. So we recommend going outdoors an hour a day. You don't have to lie and take a sun bath, but opening up your clothing so you get fresh air on your skin and in your lungs is very, very important. Walking every day. Again, if you can get out for an hour a day at least, you could do 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening, and going with your friends or family. It's great to have support. Go outside. If you can, walk in the sand, the earth, by the beach, in the grass, wherever you can to touch the earth and connect and to get that charge of the earth. The earth is alive and it gives us pulsating energy. There's a movement called earthing, where you connect with the earth, you touch the trees, you touch the flowers, you connect with the source of power on the earth. Avoid cold, avoid getting cold. I assume, and I may be wrong, but you can tell me later, in Israel, you have to run the air conditioning. Maybe not. Maybe it's that wonderful dry climate where the breeze comes through the houses. But in America, a lot of people run their air conditioning 24/7. Air conditioning does two major things. It chills the body. We do need it in some instances because houses get so humid. However, if it becomes too cold, it's not good for the bones. I know women who work in offices and they freeze. They have to wear socks. The offices are kept so cold because people eat a lot of meat. They're very hot. And then they wear a lot of wool suits, and the women get very cold in the offices. Some even have to take a heater to work, at most seasons of the year because the offices are so cold. So avoid getting cold, dress appropriately. My husband's really big on wearing hats, keeping the heat in your body. I know that's a moot point probably in Israel, but in other parts, for people who are watching today, in other parts of the world, avoid getting cold. Let's move on. If you have excess weight, it's very hard on the body. It's hard on the joints. We don't want to be too skinny and deficient, and we don't want to have so much weight. It could be stressing our heart and our joints. For 1 pound of weight loss, you're relieving 4 pounds of pressure on each knee. So consider that. I think well-rounded women are gorgeous. I love them. They're beautiful. But if it's affecting your health, pain is not so beautiful. I dislike pain tremendously, and I was willing, I tell people, to chew tree bark, whatever I had to do to get rid of the arthritis pain. And thankfully, I didn't have to go so far as tree bark. But because the macrobiotic food is so delicious, the plant-based diet is scrumptious. As you know, I understand Israel has more vegans than any other country, more percentage-wise probably, than any other country. And Ganat's going, yay. And we'll show you later how much protein and calcium you can get from plant-based foods. All right. And also slim down if you wish to. All right. Foods that harm the bones and joints. Animal foods. Now, the people who are on paleo and keto will disagree. Meat, dairy are acid forming. And Amy Leno, who's a PhD here in Asheville, has written a book called Building Bone Vitality. And she's totally vegan. Some people who are plant-based do have some fish and certain amount of animal food, a little bit here and there. But when we overeat meat and dairy, we're overeating protein. And this is a standard nutritional fact. The more protein you eat, the more the body leaches calcium out of the bones. That's why osteoporosis is a disease of wealthy countries. Where we can go through the grocery store and load up on meat and dairy of all kinds. We can go to restaurants. I remember when I was a young woman going out to eat and the piece of meat would hang off the plate. We are a meat-eating society, but it has taken a great toll on us. And again, we've just overdone it. So, excuse me, sorry. We don't recommend dairy for many reasons. These animal foods are high in cholesterol and fats, and the plant foods have zero cholesterol. Plant foods are very high in calcium, so we don't have to drink the milk and eat the ice cream and cheese to get our calcium. I know the dairy industry has wonderful advertising, and they have convinced us that we need dairy for calcium. It's not true. We don't. And the high animal food actually makes us lose calcium from our bones because the body has to pull the calcium out of our bones to buffer the acid. Okay. Refined sugar leaches minerals out of the body. So sugar, it's everywhere. Americans eat over 150 pounds of sugar a year. It's almost like a wheelbarrow full of sugar. And other countries adore sugar too. So I was talking with a friend who has relatives in Peru, and he said when they have dinner, there's 3 desserts. There's 3 desserts, and they're struggling with many diseases there now. So sugar has been called a neurotoxin. If you email me, I'm happy to send you links to lectures about this and about foods, particularly sugar. And the New York Times Magazine about 4 years ago had a cover story of sugar, and it's very, very serious. I'll show you some other foods, and my husband, who's following me, will show you some other wonderful sweeteners so you don't have to eat sugar. So avoid sugar, high fructose corn syrup. Fatty fried foods contribute to health, not only with bones, but with cancer and heart disease. Chemicals and drugs. There are certain drugs that will cause joint pain. So again, look up your prescriptions, discuss this with your doctor. Prescriptions for statins, prescriptions for other heart ailments or diabetes can cause mineral loss and bone loss. GMO foods can cause sterility, and these are not even labeled now. So look for the label that says no GMOs. Look for organic. I've mentioned cold foods and icy foods. If you don't do anything else after my lecture, but take away iced water, iced sodas, iced tea with chunky ice in it. Believe me, I used to load it up with ice. I'm from the South. We had sweet tea. I think each glass of tea had 2 teaspoons of sugar and lots of ice. And I wondered why we all were getting arthritis. So if you don't change one thing, avoid cold drinks. You can have room temperature drinks and keep your bones healthy, but it's when it gets refrigerated or icy. I know that when I see people and we do counseling, and it's one of the main things that we counsel about is avoiding the iced water. Now, what do they bring us in America? I'm not sure about Israel, but in Europe, they don't do this so much, but the first thing they bring you at the restaurant table is ice water. It's the worst thing to put in your stomach. It freezes your stomach linings. It stops digestive problems. And it's one of the reasons, at least in America, we have huge amounts of irritable bowel, ulcers, and all sorts of digestive problems like Crohn's. And it's very serious. You can ask the waitress at the restaurant to please bring you a pot of warm water. Now you're probably going, oh no, it's the last thing I want. However, in a couple of minutes, it will get nice room temperature. It gets a sweet flavor. They'll bring you free lemon, usually, and you'll have a nice pot of boiled water. I cannot emphasize enough how much that will help your bones. So try it. Try it for a week, avoiding cold water, icy water, and having water that's been pre-boiled. My husband and I boil a pot of water every day, and we put it in a pitcher. So we have it on our counter, and it's very refreshing. Our house is, our house is somewhere in the 70 degrees temperature, and it feels very refreshing because our bodies are 98.6, so even room temperature water is refreshing. Avoid ice. All right, I think I've said that enough. Avoid nightshade vegetables. Over 50% of us are allergic to tomatoes and potatoes. Now, you may not know if you're allergic. The only way you'll know is if you have joint pain, and for 1 month, stop tomatoes only. Now, I love tomatoes. They're one of my favorite foods, but they don't love me back. I'm sorry. I'm allergic to them. I overate tomatoes. In the South, we had them every lunch and dinner, big plates of tomatoes. And I know in Israel, a beautiful salad with tomatoes and olive oil and lemon, there's just nothing better. But if you have joint pain, experiment with tomatoes. That would include tomato sauce, but especially raw tomatoes, tomato juice, and foods like that. Potatoes is another one. Potatoes can leach minerals. Try it. Try avoiding potatoes and seeing if your joints don't feel better and you can move better and you don't feel like you're 200 years old creaking around. Not everybody's allergic, but I definitely am sensitive, and probably you could say allergic to potatoes and tomatoes. There's no coincidence that they're the most popular foods, vegetables rather, in America, because they complement dairy and meat. The astringent, acidy quality of the tomatoes, like tomato sauce on lasagna with cheese, sandwiches with cheese and tomatoes, the tomatoes help digest the dairy. Well, we don't eat dairy, so we don't have to have tomatoes all the time when we eat cheese. There are, by the way, some pretty good vegan cheeses, some cashew cheeses, almond cheese. So try it sometimes. Have a party, a cocktail party or appetizer party, and try 3 or 4 kinds of the vegan cheeses. They're quite nice. So potatoes actually help leach minerals out of the body because the high mineral meats have to have some partnership, some counter, elements. The meat in America, it would be hamburgers and French fries, or it would be steak and potatoes. So these, complement each other. However, they could be causing your joint pain. Eliminate them and see. Dr. Sherry Rogers, a wonderful physician who promotes a plant-based diet. In fact, she won't see patients if they don't get on a macrobiotic plant-based diet. And she talks about the nightshades. All right. Overly salty foods decrease estrogen, make you tight, make you thirsty. Then you want to overdo the water. You want to overdo the liquids. Avoid over salty foods, which would be restaurant foods. Too much salt in the restaurants, unfortunately. You could ask them to go light on the salt. And at home, it's mostly in snacks, packaged foods, extremely salty and poor quality salt. We recommend sea salt. We love the one from Sicily, and we use it in our food. Salt actually strengthens the bones if you get the right amount. So the good recipes, look at the recipe books, the cookbooks, and learn how to add moderate amounts of salt to your cooking. Baked flour products, too many of these lower estrogen, they contract the body, especially hard ones like crackers and pretzels can cause constipation. They harden the body. They make more face wrinkles. They make more contraction in the intestines. I know, who doesn't love bread? Who doesn't love all this? It's wonderful. Cakes, cookies. We have to decide what we want in our life, and to have a softer dessert, a pudding, fruit, could make all the difference in how you feel and how your intestines work, because a lot of people are constipated. Foods that nourish, plant-based diet, beans, legumes. Now beans, what's the great food in the Mideast? Hummus. And I'm probably not pronouncing that as accurately as I could. But to me, it's a food group. I love it. I have it almost every day. I'm crazy about it. It's what actually led me to see my husband. I had hummus at a wedding. The next day I woke up and I had no more joint pain. And I said, wait a minute, what's different? What did I eat yesterday? And I said, well, you were standing by the hummus table pretty long there. And, it's just 40 years ago, hummus wasn't the great popular food it is now. And I had no more joint pain. So beans and legumes help nourish the kidneys. In Chinese medicine, you can learn the kidneys affect the bones and joints, and beans are one of the best foods. We eat a variety of beans. We'll be showing you those later. So sea vegetables. Sea vegetables nourish the kidneys and are extremely high in minerals. In a tablespoon of kombu, there's over 1,000 milligrams of calcium. And you can look on the labels, you can study online. The sea vegetables are tremendously high in minerals. The country, again, with the longest lifespan, Japan, eats sea vegetables every day. We put this delicate one in our soups. It doesn't look like the lagoon of creepy slimy food. It's just a little sprinkling of a delicious seaweed called wakame. And I'm not sure what's available to you in Israel, but I know all throughout Europe, there are health food stores, even macrobiotic restaurants, places where you can get sea vegetables, and ganat would be a wonderful source for that. And I recommend you add those into your daily diet in nice, delicate, delicious ways. At the very least, you can go to Japanese restaurants. I'm not sure if the restaurants are operating everywhere now. You can learn to make nori rolls. Nori is a sea vegetable. You can put kombu in your beans. It has a very sweet flavor. And I understand in Japan, the children even just chew on a piece of kombu. And we put about a 2-inch piece in every pot of beans. And it's very high in minerals. And I'm absolutely pain-free, and I have strong bones. My chiropractor examined me with imaging and said I will never need a hip replacement. So I couldn't have heard better health results than that. Vegetables, they're the saviors. Vegetables. If you tend to be weak, deficient, spacey, cold, have root vegetables, more root vegetables. So strengthening, especially for men. They're strengthening for everybody, but for athletes and men, that root vegetable energy, it's very good for sexual vitality, for leg strength, people who are runners, people who are in the Army, lots of good root stews, really help out. Now, grated carrots too on a salad. There are many ways to prepare root vegetables. Beets are extremely high in iron. We don't need to eat a big steak to get iron. Look up how much iron is in beets, turnips, and all these wonderful root vegetables. So, we've mentioned having good quality sea salt. Fermented foods help establish probiotics in the intestines, and they help digestion. Once we choose foods, how we digest foods is hugely important. It's life changing. So we make pickles, the wonderful pickles from the Jewish delis. Lino remembers in Brooklyn, where he used to live, the pickle barrels would be in all the stores there, and I'm sure people were just reaching in and getting pickles out. Or they had forks, I guess. But the pickles, the fermented foods, extremely strengthening. Now again, with salt, pickles have salt. You don't want to overdo. So it doesn't mean that if a little's good for you, that a lot is better. It's not true. But we recommend a tablespoon, perhaps 2, of sauerkraut, pickles, every lunch and dinner. So very important. We've talked about miso soups, wonderful probiotic foods, delicious too, delicious. There are many types of miso. My favorite lately is chickpea miso. And I hope some people in Israel are making their own miso. It's really a life-strengthening food. All right, so warm, nourishing foods. And what we recommend are whole grains. We need the fiber, we need the minerals. We eat brown rice, quinoa. Quinoa is very, very popular now, and there are many types of quinoa. I even make quinoa tabbouleh. Tabbouleh is my favorite grain. I could actually be happy living in the Middle East eating your foods. And with hummus and tabbouleh, I'm set. But we don't want to just have that every day only. So I make quinoa tabbouleh. There's always oats, millet. We make entrees with these foods. We make soups, and we make desserts with all these foods. Corn grits. I'm from the South. We had grits all the time, and people from Italy eat polenta. It's a wonderful, wonderful grain. I actually mix 50-50 corn grits and millet. And then I have a wonderful soft cereal in the morning, and then I put it in a pan and it will set. You can cut squares with it or triangles and pan fry it in olive oil. It's so good. It's so good. And there's amaranth and teff. You could add a small amount to your other foods. These are ancient grains. Wheat, spelt, and farro. The farro and spelt are ancient cousins of wheat, and many people, even with gluten intolerance, can have these. Barley. There's nothing like barley mushroom soup, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite grains too. And then pastas. I mean, what is life without some pasta, right? So we eat. We don't eat the whole wheat pasta so much anymore because the one in America isn't really as good as the one from Italy. But we get there's quinoa, brown rice pasta, fabulous. Many other grains. In fact, they're making a chickpea pasta now, believe it or not. So, and it's really great. So you get that extra protein from the beans, and then you have the nice spaghetti. All right, this is the food for the kidneys and for the bones, beans. And if you look here, there's something called the law of signature. It's an ancient law in Chinese medicine that if a food looks like a part of the body, it's good for it. So for instance, walnuts look like the brain. The inside of a carrot looks like the iris of the eye. And then we have the kidney beans. Look at the kidneys. And it's like nature's trying to teach us and tell us about these. We make our beans from scratch, and I'm sure Ganat does too. However, if you're busy and cooking is not your thing, they make excellent organic beans with sea salt. Get the ones that have sea salt on the label, because beans need to be salted. There is a side effect from beans. We all know what it is. And it's embarrassing because it can give us digestive gas. So if you cook the beans with kombu and they're salted properly, you can reduce the gas. Before you cook the beans, and I should say, you soak them. I can't give you the whole recipe this morning, but read your recipes, learn to soak them the night before, discard the soak water, cook them properly, and if you need extra strength, put root vegetables in there. I always put an onion in my beans. I'm telling you this because they can really be scrumptious. And it's fun to cook this way. But again, if you're very busy and you're adverse to cooking for whatever reason, either hire a really good vegan cook, or you can buy the canned beans and add your own onions and scallions on top and olive oil. Lino's father used to love to get 2 kinds of canned beans and then put lots of lemon and olive oil on top and make a bean salad. Beans are extremely high in protein. A cup of cooked beans has as much protein as a hamburger. We do not have to eat meat for protein, and we save the poor animals from their suffering. So it's really something to think about. I want all of you, if you can, to look at the movie called The Game Changers, G-A-M-E Changers. It has top Olympic athletes. It has celebrities like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's given up eating meat. And it has physicians like Neil Bernard. And even doctors who deal with men's virility have found that men who eat a vegan diet have greater virility than men who don't. And there's a whole section on there about the men and their virility. These top athletes, including the man who can lift the most weights in the world, is vegan. So it takes away that old feeling we used to always have, the information that you had to have meat, to be mighty. So the game, let me go through my slides. Lena, why don't you come around? He'll be with us in just a second. And vegetables. Look at this when you can, and share with your friends. When Ginat does record this, you can go back and look at it. These are the sea vegetables. We have the miso soup on the top left. We have the kombu on the top right, nori, and then wakame there. Fruits. I think fruits make the most wonderful desserts. I just love them. My favorite lately is chia seed pudding with blueberries. Water. Dr. Stillman was telling people back in the 70s to eat, to drink 12 to 20 glasses of water a day. And I started doing that. That's when my joint pain really started. We can wash away too many minerals with too much water. Just like a house plant, we need the right amount of water. Too little and the plant dies. Too much and the plant dies. The same with our bones. When we're eating plant-based and a lot of home cooking, we're not so salty and thirsty. What doctors are recommending now is about 8 glasses of water a day, but it includes tea and soups. So if we have soup twice a day and tea 3 times, we've already had 5 cups of water a day. So we don't need to over drink water, okay? You look at your urine should be light yellow. It shouldn't be too brown. You can check your urine in the morning when you first wake up and put it in a glass container and look at it. It should be the color of light beer and not too brown. If it's too brown, you need to drink more water. If it's too pale, you're drinking too much water. You need to have more miso soups and rich foods. Okay, that tells about Dr. Stillman, and I've explained about this. I've explained about cooking the water. We love spring water. We love kukicha tea, high minerals, grain teas, grain coffee, vegetable juices, carrot juice. Coffee can leach minerals. So if you have joint pain, stop the coffee for a week or 2. See if your joint pain doesn't back off. Coffee, caffeine of any kind can leach minerals. Dr. Nancy Appleton has written books on the bones, and she says that caffeine can cause joint and bone deterioration. We've talked about no cold water and dairy and alcohol. So we've covered all these. Sodas I haven't mentioned, but they contain phosphoric acid and carbonated. Sometimes they just inject the carbonation into it, carbonated substance, gas, and this can leach minerals out of the bones. And the sugar, I've mentioned sugar leaches minerals. So we need sunlight. Israel has all they can use. I understand Israel's getting a lot of solar panels in their houses. It's wonderful. And even in the cars, I heard. But sunshine is very important. We've talked about that too. Don't get too much, don't get burned, but sunlight in your eyes, sunlight, I don't mean staring at the sun, but getting the light in your eyes and in your body. Get plenty of fresh air. Here's a bunch of friends getting together. Aim for an hour a day and find a support team. Ganat's a wonderful support team. She can't go out on walks with you every day, but we encourage you to get together with friends and have fresh air, get outside. And wonderful exercise. There's my husband there in the middle with his walking stick in the woods of North Carolina. And on the left top, I join all these classes online now and in the gym, group dance classes, Zumba, and jazzercise. I need to look up jazzercise. That's all the great music that I grew up with, jazzercise. And yoga on the beach, yoga. Then in the bottom is rebounding. Rebounding can build your bones. They have astronauts do rebounding. The pressure and the bouncing strengthens bones. Bones are deteriorating in the in zero gravity, so they have them do rebounding. Okay, and then find peace and purpose in your life. When you're happy and fulfilled, your blood flows, your love flows, and share your good knowledge with people, help them cook, teach them, and we love our animals and gardening, all those really good things to make you happy. Positive thinking increases immunity. It actually measurably increases T cells. So you can contact us. We have free information. We do counseling. We also have books. My husband has a book on the kidneys. kidney strength and incontinence and recipes. We just have so much information, and Ginat has a lot of information. She can tell you tremendous amounts. So thank you all for being here. I hope that you'll derive some good information from this. And Lino will be taking over the seat here. And so I'm going to put Lino's PowerPoint on. He's going to talk about dynamic longevity. He's a special 88-year-old. We're both licensed nutritionists, and he's also a licensed massage therapist. And I do occasionally get a massage from him. But all
Jane,
right.
thank you so much. That was just lovely. So much information. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Now we want, oops.